Thank you, Madam President, fellow colleagues. As amended, AB 265 proposes to ban manufacturers from offering in California any form of reduction in a person's out-of-pocket health insurance expenses, typically referred to as copay assistance. Now, if this bill did exactly what the floor jockey said, when you have a drug and its true generic is available, then you shouldn't be able to give coupons for the brand name. But where this bill differentiates, it talks about a lower cost tier. So the drug is not exactly the same. So here are some of the issues I have with the bill. With the exception of biologic drugs like Humira, a pharmacist can legally substitute a drug which is a true generic equivalent of that drug. An example of a drug that probably many of you have heard is Lipitor. Lipitor is one of the first statins that was on the market that effectively lowered one's cholesterol, probably better than any of its predecessors with fewer side effects. However, the problem with Lipitor is that it competes with a lot of other drugs for elimination and potentially has drug interactions that can be life-threatening for a patient. So what we've seen in the development of modern statins is that they have reduced the cholesterol without those dangerous, potentially life-threatening interactions. So people that usually take Lipitors or statins to lower their blood fats usually take other high blood pressure pills, antiarrhythmic drugs, diuretic drugs, diabetic drugs. And so they're taking a plethora of medications where drug interactions can be a problem. So if I may show just an example, Madam President. This is
Without objection.
Thank you so much. This is a statin, a newer statin that's on the market, and it's called Livalo. And the reason why this drug is so popular is because it doesn't have the drug interactions that historical statins have. It's currently under patent. There are no other drugs that you can substitute this with, unless you can say it's just a lower cost generic and maybe the similar family of drugs. So if you have a patient that has no choice but to use Livalo, they can get up to $75 for a 30-day supply or $225 off a 90-day supply. So we're going to be telling the patient that can only use this drug that they can't have a coupon for that drug. Another example, and we've all heard about the example of EpiPens and the EpiPen debacle, where we saw a company that basically had a corner on the market. Well, fortunately for consumers, we now have generic EpiPens that are on the market. There are two manufacturers. And if I may proceed, well, again, with other demonstrations, I have two from two different manufacturers, one a $25 copay, and one that actually can be potentially at no cost to the consumer based on their financial status. So what we're also saying is generic coupons cannot be used under this bill. Lower cost tier drugs does not mean the drug intended has less side effects, drug interactions, or allergy issues. So, another issue is that sometimes you get drugs that are generically available, and drug companies will combine them for ease of compliance. And so for allergy patients, there's another coupon here. This is a generic drug, but it's patented because nobody else can make this combination without going through a process. It's a $14 savings, and what it is, it's an inhaled steroid and antihistamine for people that have severe allergic reactions. So again, it's a generic, a $14 coupon cannot be used under this program. So, my friends, we are trying to help our constituents that can use a generic equivalent of a drug in lieu of being coerced, if you will, through a coupon to use a brand name drug when the less expensive alternative that's equivalent can be used. But there are some patients that just can't use those generic drugs. They have to use another class, another type of drug, and there are coupons for those drugs that will be taking away those opportunities at a time when senior citizens are struggling to pay their high costs of living, certainly here in the state of California. I think the intentions of the author are great. But I think the bill needs more work, and I'm committed to work with this author and make sure that we don't hurt those that we're trying to help with this bill by making it more expensive for them to acquire their prescription medications. Just one clarification, colleagues. If you look at the quick summary of the bill, it talks about the substitution that has to be on the health plan lower cost sharing tier that is designated as a therapeutic equivalent. That's not a generic equivalent. That's a therapeutic, interchangeable with the prescription drug, or if the active ingredient or the drugs are regulated by the FDA. Well, they're all going to be regulated by the FDA if they're manufactured. So where we get into a lot of trouble with these coupons and problems is people that use expensive psychiatric medications. And what happens is these insurance companies want to take people off some of these more expensive psychiatric medications that a patient may be stabilized on and move them to a generic equivalent of another drug to save money, not with the advice of the psychiatrist. So what you're going to see is a lot of psychiatric failures by implementing a coupon program like this. So it is therapeutic equivalent. It is not generic equivalent. If it was generic equivalent, I would support the bill because I believe that you shouldn't be able to use a coupon for a brand name drug when there's a generic equivalent available, but not when there's a therapeutic equivalent, which just means it's in the same family, doesn't take into account allergies, it doesn't take into account adverse reactions, it doesn't take into account drug interactions. So this is why the bill needs to be just changed a little bit. And I think we can accomplish the goal of making sure that we provide lower cost drugs to our constituents. This is going to raise costs for constituents. And one final note, Madam President, if a doctor knows that a particular drug that's branded that may have a generic be appropriate for a patient, he has the right to write on that prescription, do not substitute. And the pharmacist cannot legally give a generic drug when a doctor demands a brand name drug for a particular reason for the efficacy of that patient's health and welfare. Why would we penalize that patient financially with a bill like this? So for those reasons, again, I hope you'll consider voting no on this.
Thank you, Senator.